Eventually, though, you cannot have a strategy of heroism as your security strategy. That is not sustainable. It might work in short bursts, and it might be something that's needed in the short term. But I would definitely start to think about, are your business processes secure? Do you have a way to look at the data? How are you making sure that you're trying to reduce the risk as much as possible? At some point, someone's going to have to make a decision. Hey, it's time to spend a little money and catch up here, or augment, or whatever it may be. What tends up happening a lot of times I see is you get so far behind that you have to spend a lot of money to catch up. And it becomes like this ginormous task to just get to where good is, or maybe even adequate. And then, I talk about peaks and valleys from a budget perspective. You spend a whole lot of money catching up, and then you don't keep up with it. And then guess what? In 3 to 5 years, maybe a little bit longer if you're lucky, you're spending a whole bunch more money again to try and catch up to good. If you could just figure out how to make that a slow and steady, probably increase just because prices get more expensive over time, I think you'll have a better approach. But it takes a lot of financial discipline to do that. And not every organization is in that mode of, hey, this is going to be a sustained investment. Identity is forever. And so I think you need to think about identity as a long-term commitment for the organization.
This is Identity at the Center. If it has anything to do with IAM, this is the go-to podcast. Now your hosts, Jim McDonald and Jeff Stedman.
Welcome to the Identity at the Center podcast. I'm Jeff, and that's Jim. Hey, Jim.
Hey, Jeff. How are you?
Not so bad. Yourself?
I'm doing good. Hey, in all transparency, today is Ash Wednesday holiday, and I saw something I've never seen before. So I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, in the United States, and was driving up to a corner in my Uber, and they had drive up Ash Wednesday, where they put the ashes on people's foreheads. So you didn't even have to go to church and park and do all the other inconvenient steps. You could just pull up. They do the blessing, give you the ashes, and on your way you go. I didn't do it, but I think it's very convenient for people. They have a drive-up wedding chapel in Vegas. I mean, how convenient is that?
Well, apparently there's a drive-up for everything. So
I think so.
I guess that's what it is. And in more transparency, you're not in your normal location. Where are you?
That's right. I'm in a hotel lobby because my room was not ready. So we decided to record at 4 o'clock. My room was supposed to be ready at 4 o'clock, and 4 o'clock came and no room was available.
The joys of business travel, right?
Yeah, I mean, basically we spent all day in a tube, not at 40,000 feet the whole time. A lot of it was at ground level, just sitting there waiting to take off.
That's the worst. We just sit on
all
the tarmac. Can't go anywhere. You're just kind of like, all right, let's get this thing done.
I know. And when I first got out of college, my dream was to travel for work, and it was a blast for the beginning. And then it's when you're sitting there and it's 10:30 at night and you just want to get home and get in your comfy clothes and get in bed, and you're sitting, and you've got a 2-hour flight ahead of you, but you've just been sitting there for hours on end. Take some of the fun out of it.
Do you have the Flighty app, your iPhone? I'm guessing no.
What is that?
It's basically a little app that will track your flights for you and kind of, tell you if delays and stuff like that. And I'm a fan of it. I've had it for a few years now, but it tracks every single flight. And so you can track how many you've taken, delay. I'm looking at it right now, hours lost from delays, it has your passport, how many flights, where you've gone, miles and stuff like that. 2024, we'll just go over this, my quick stats. 101 flights in the year 2024, only 58,000, almost 59,000 miles. So a lot of it is just kind of, regional US travel. 33 hours lost from delays because of that, because from flying. So a day and a half, basically.
You'll never get that time back.
Nope. Just sitting there. And I'm already at 3 hours lost from delays this year. And I think I'm only playing a couple times so far.
we should say we are not sponsored by the Flighty app.
We are not, but I would happily take a year subscription if anybody from Flighty is listening. It's a great little app. If you're a frequent traveler, highly recommended. Unfortunately, it is iOS only. So my friends with Androids, unfortunately, can't partake. And I did not, when I flirt with Android every year, and I recently did it a few weeks ago with a new Galaxy phone, and I could not find anything close to what Flighty does. So I really hope they add an Android version to the roadmap in the future. But as you said, not sponsored by Flighty. I'm just a fan of the app, and I think it has some interesting information.
I always know when you're trying out the Android app, they start getting green text from you. It's like blue, 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 green. Like, just on another Android.
Yep. That's me, man. Always trying stuff out. You gotta know what's going on in the world, right? I love Android phones. They're great.
But here's something you taught me. So I didn't know this. You know, the green text, you think they're SMSs, but they're not necessarily SMSs. They could be, I forget what you call them, but RCS.
RCS. Yep. So Apple added support for that last year, I think as part of like iOS 18. And so now there is some comparable capabilities and features that are similar to iMessage, but cross-platform between Android and iOS users, as long as your messaging app supports RCS. So,
but just, educate your family out there, because there is a warning that I think came from the FBI, like your texts, if they are SMS texts, they can be seen by, just assume they can be seen by anybody who is a hacker. So, I'm sure nobody who listens to this podcast does this, but taking pictures of your credit card and then like texting them to somebody you trust on the other end. It doesn't matter if you trust them on the other end. It's all the people in between that can potentially see that. So spread the word, good fellow.
That's a risk no matter what you do, I guess. So just gotta be careful. Why don't we cover our conferences real quick? Because I'm nervous that you're in the hotel lobby and someone's gonna come over and cause problems for us. They're gonna ask for an autograph. Are you the Jim McDonald from the Identity Center podcast?
Sure.
Let's see. Let's start with London. We have the Gartner IAM Summit coming up March 24th and 25th. If you use the code IDAC 425, that'll save you 425 euros. That is definitely coming up here in the next couple of weeks by the time this airs. So definitely want to make sure you take advantage of that. Show some support. We will not be there, but we'll be in Berlin for the European Identity and Cloud Conference. So that is May 6th through the 9th. I still only have a flight into Berlin at this point. I still haven't figured out what I'm doing after that. But if you use the code IDAC25MKO, that'll get you 25% off. So hopefully we'll see lots of people out there that we know and make and meet new friends while we're out there. So that'll be exciting. I know you've got Identibeers planned, right?
Identibeer, at this point, it's just the one Identibeer in Oslo. And then I'm sure you'll be there for this one as well. There's like the Identibeer, which is the first, I guess it's May, what's the first day? The Monday before the conference.
And it's like May 5th or 6th. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's an Identibeer in Berlin there. So we'll definitely be there as well.
It's pretty cool. I'm looking forward to it. And then I take a week off and then come back for, I think, maybe a week to the US and then head into Identiverse, Las Vegas. June 3rd through the 6th, if you use the code IDV25-IDAC25, that gets you 25% off. Don't worry about trying to remember these. As I quickly ran through them, they will be in our show notes, and they're always on the homepage of idacpodcast.com. You just scroll down, and you'll see everything that we've got active at that point. So hopefully people are able to take advantage of that. And doesn't cost you anything. It saves you money and just shows support for the show. So please use those if you plan on attending events.
Yeah, and I just want to say something before we kind of dive into our topics for the day. Is I've had a lot of people reach out to me recently and connect on LinkedIn and say that they really enjoy the show. And I got to tell you, like, every time that happens, like, it's just like fills my heart a little bit just to know that people are out there that we're part of their lives, or part of their day or their week. And we don't know that, right? We put the podcast out there, and maybe people listen, maybe they don't. But when people reach out and say, I really love the podcast, it means a lot to me, and I know it does to you as well.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the fact that we don't advertise at all, and we are 100% word of mouth. I mean, it's pretty amazing, how big this thing has gotten. And Yeah. It's definitely not lost on me. Definitely appreciate everyone who takes the time to reach out, and yeah, it's great. So we'll keep on doing it. And really, that's what this show is all about today, even. I mean, today's a mailbag episode, which we get lots of emails and stuff like that asking us questions, and we try to kind of save them up till we've got kind of a good amount that we think we can tackle that might be interesting questions for everyone to hear. So why don't we just jump right into it? Do you want me to read these off? Do you want to take turns? Like, how do you?
Why don't you go ahead and read them off? Because I'm kind of like in the hotel. I've got just the laptop screen, no second monitor, so I'm going like cheap and cheerful today.
That's fine. All right, let's start with, and this is a very global mailbag, by the way. So let me read this off here. So Ryan from Sydney, Australia, I presume. I'm a new IAM professional looking to grow my career. What certifications or skills which would you recommend focusing on in 2025? I think this is a pretty common question. A lot of people kind of getting into this space. Where do you even start?
Yeah. Do you want me to go first, or do you want to? Okay. So
yeah, I feel like this is right in your wheelhouse, because this is all about sharpening the saw, or maybe even building a saw.
It is sharpening the saw. Yeah, totally. And I think there's not one answer for everybody, right? Because you may be really good in one area, like you and I, our specialty was running a program, but we're not going to write application code and things like that. Where that's other people, like they love like coming up with an idea, make something happen, and then be able to make it work on the computer. So you have to know like what gets you excited. What are you going to put the time into? For other people, it's like, hey, the idea of being the go-to person who makes a project happen. And by the way, project managers usually get a lot of credit. You know, it's a whole team that steers the boat, but a lot of people in upper management came from a project management background. So if you're the project manager who delivered a project and made all the parts and pieces come together, you get a lot of the credit behind the scenes anyway.
I love a good project manager because I hate doing that work. So
it's
a good one is invaluable for sure. So let me give a shout out to people like Krista and Ben. If you guys are listening, like definitely, the stars of the team.
Yeah, for sure. Like, and that's kind of my background. And I think it's a great place to go and develop your skills. I also look, if what you really enjoy doing is the technical side of the house, and like that's going to get you to develop yourself and build your career, then you don't want to be doing stuff other than project management and stuff. Put your time into what interests you. I do think certifications, definitely having some letters behind your name in this market, is a great way to kind of prove that you've got some knowledge, and maybe that you got some ambition and aspirations to further your career, especially if you're starting to take certifications that are maybe a step beyond where you are at the moment. And then I think, so that can go all the way up to like when you start hearing about certifications like CISSP and PMP and stuff like that, where it's like, oh, now I'm thinking like I want to be somebody who does large scale project management, or I want to be maybe a CISO someday. Now you start getting looks at and offered positions and opportunities maybe within your current company to take on bigger roles. And that's how you build a career. I think, the question was probably more of like, how do you start out? But I think we do wind up answering that a lot, I think. But I think one way is to don't be afraid to do kind of some of the entry level roles, like working on the help desk. I mean, my first role wasn't really help desk, but I did a lot of like help desk work where I would like do end user troubleshooting stuff. And you learn so much from doing that, both sides of the house, dealing with people and also like learning how to fix computers and work through your identity access management issues.
Yeah. I mean, I started in the help desk, didn't really have any fun stories out of that other than, that's how I got into it, is like help desk. The next thing you know, I'm doing IoT stuff before it was even called IoT back in 2001. So definitely would echo, you need to make a decision probably earlier on, do you want to be technical or non-technical? Because there is plenty of space for both. I feel like it might be easier for some people to do the technical because there is a wealth of training. There's different vendor trainings for different products. Some of them charge, some of them are free. Tons of YouTube videos, things like that. It might be a little bit tougher to get hands-on with vendor solutions because those typically cost money and you really only can learn what you got access to. So that's where maybe a certification does help, because typically with a certification, especially if you're taking like a course, they might give you access to, like a SailPoint training environment or a Savient training environment or Ping or CyberArk or something like that. If you don't want to be technical, and that's fine, I think you still need to be technical enough to have a solid conversation, but that's where the soft skills come in. So if you can articulate and communicate really well, if you're well organized, plenty of spaces, for that kind of stuff. I think you just kind of build up the experience from there. I think you've got to be realistic too, that if you don't have any IAM experience and you're looking to get IAM, you're probably going to need to figure out, how can you kind of make that work? But I would definitely echo the same thing. Start with what you like to do and then fill in the cracks around that. ID Pro has a great body of knowledge for people who are looking to, get into it. I think it's a good starting place. There's a lot more resources now than there ever has been, and new ones are always popping up. So like our friend Andrew Chantaphone has, YouTube channel. He does LinkedIn learnings. Like there's a bunch of stuff that's out there that people have access to, but you have to be prepared to, grind it out. It's not going to happen overnight.
What do you think about for somebody who is, mid to late career? Do you think that it makes sense for people who are, say, coming out of the military or have just decided, like, I need to change. I want to get into identity. I listen to Jim and Jeff, and I hear people like Eve and Ian talk. It seems so exciting. What do you think for those folks?
I mean, a lot of folks coming out of the military may already have some of these skills, especially if they're coming from an IT background into the military itself. There's definitely opportunities for sure to take advantage of that. I think the other things to think about would be, again, I think the military teaches discipline, and that is always helpful no matter what job you're in. So, I think that's a good background to start with. And look, there are roles out there. Some of them aren't, sexy. They're entry level. You might have to start somewhere, but if you are interested in it, spend the time. I mean, I started in help desk, didn't know anything about IAM, and next thing you know, I'm being shown here's these different things, and then start to figure it out, and then next thing you know, I'm programming Siemens lighting controls, getting them on the network, and connecting them to electrical panels and all kinds of stuff. Before that, I was bartending. So there really is, the line is very thin that you need to kind of pass through. You just need the opportunity, and I hate to say it, but sometimes luck is part of that, and you can increase your luck by maintaining and building relationships. There's a lot of people in this space, and if you start to work in those relationships, when things open up, that'll help you get your foot in the door.
That's right. I think that's a great summary, right? Because it's not like if you take this certification or get that degree, you're guaranteed a good job anyway. You could be stuck in a tough job market, or you have none of those things and you just get lucky and land in a job. I'm not saying you just got lucky, but get that opportunity that you didn't even really know where it would lead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And I think there are certain sectors maybe that might be easier to get into. Maybe like nonprofit. It's typically looking for folks all the time because they may not pay as well as others, but you get lots of great experience there, and you get to wear a lot of hats. So maybe that's an avenue to get in the door for folks. So volunteering is another way. Local organizations. Just offer to help and be helpful, and hopefully, that leads to stuff. Yeah,
that's a great one. So I think we hit that question pretty good.
Yeah, that was good one from Ryan. So hopefully that helps. If not, drop us a message on LinkedIn and tell us how else we can answer that question.
All right, let's trivia question for you, Jeff. Trivia question. So I looked at our podcast listener stats, and I don't trust them completely, but I wanted to ask you. U.S. is definitely our top country for listeners at like 36%.
Surprisingly low, if you think about it, where this thing started.
What country came in second place?
I think it's the UK, isn't it? I mean, it's got to be English speaking. India, maybe?
It is India.
Okay.
So
yeah.
give me a guess of what percentage of our listening population.
10, 15. I haven't looked at this. I have access to stats. I just haven't looked at them in a long time.
So this was just over the last 30 days, and it was 3.6%.
3.6%. That doesn't sound like a lot.
It doesn't, but that's second place. So it's really spread out over all the countries.
That's right. We don't put all of our eggs in one American basket. We spread them all over the world. And eggs are really expensive right now, so I guess that's probably a good thing.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, well let's keep moving around the world here. Let's go to Diego from Madrid in Spain. What are some of the most common mistakes companies make when rolling out MFA, and how do you avoid them? So, first mistake is if you're waiting till 2025 to roll out MFA, you're probably about 10 years really too late, but really probably 4 or 5 years too late at this point. But hey, let's assume that maybe they just couldn't get to it, and now they're doing it. So, what are some common mistakes that you've seen, Jim, when it comes to rolling out MFA?
So my first reaction to this question is that the IAM practitioners that I've worked with tend to know their user populations really well. So I don't think it's just like the user experience or just forgetting things about your user is a common mistake, but I do think that's probably the area that, we say this has got to be the front and foremost on your mind is like, how are users going to receive this? And there's user populations that don't have access to their device when they are at work. So if they're in like kind of a clean room environment or maybe working in a prison or something, they can't bring in their phone. That's a concern. Then there are certain users where they're like, well, this is my phone. I pay the bill. Why should I have to install your software on it, things like that. So I think different organizations face different use cases like that. But in my experience, like practitioners seem to know that one. I think the biggest probably thing that I've seen people get hung up on is like if they try and push it up to too many users at once and their help desk gets frustrated with issues because let's face it, we'll go back to my favorite person to bring up on who's a non-technical person, my dad.
I haven't heard from your dad in a while.
I know. Well, here he is. And, you push out MFA to him and he might be like, what is this? They want me to, especially if you do something new and it's not like if it's the SMS to your phone, you're trying to figure that out because everybody does that. It's like ubiquitous now. But if you have to go and download an Authenticator app, you're not going to get it. It might be the first time you've ever had to do it. And it's going to be super confusing. Or even if he has done it, he maybe hasn't done it twice on the same Authenticator app or know the ins and outs of how it's going to work. It's going to be confusing to him. So he's probably going to have to call the help desk or open some kind of ticket or something, which is fine. He can handle some tickets coming through. But if you do 10,000 users in one weekend and your help desk gets 1,000 messages, man, you're in trouble.
Yeah, I don't want to get 10,000 calls from your dad asking me how to set up an authenticator.
Well, they won't be quick. They won't be quick calls.
Well, I think that highlights, I think, the importance of communication and the user experience. Think about what you're doing and then make it as simple as possible.
Yeah.
Just simplify it. So definitely for sure, I think simplification helps. I struggle with this because everybody at this point, everybody in the IAM industry and security industry probably understands that SMS is not a great MFA option. It's very easy. It's ubiquitous. We've all figured out how to use it, but it is better than nothing. So if you have the choice and you think your users can tolerate it, try to go with an authenticator app of some sort, either your own company or one of the major ones like, Google, Microsoft, Authy, things like that. There's plenty of those out there. But I would not try to force people, especially right away, into the most difficult one. Try to have a couple options. I think mistake that I see is, well, we're only going to use the Authenticator app from Microsoft, for example. Just pick on that one for right now. It's a great app. It works well. But if that's the only option you've got, What if your phone doesn't support it? What if you forget your phone, right? There's a whole bunch of other kind of things around that. And you're really setting yourself up for pain on the help desk side. So you want to think about that. I think the other thing that I typically see is they think it's like a either an all or nothing, or, well, we're just going to put it on this app. And so you end up with these gaps in coverage. Okay, well, we have MFA, but it's only on our Active Directory. And there's a whole bunch of like SaaS apps out there that don't have MFA. So I think trying to have, the coverage to make sure you have as many applications as possible with an MFA, a lot easier if you have a single identity provider, single sign-on provider that you're using that you can tie that to. Might not be feasible for everyone, but try to have as much coverage with as many different options and let people choose the option that they like. And over time, you can ratchet up the security. Like I said, I don't think you have to go immediately to, retina scan and send me your firstborn child to prove who you are.
Well, you're definitely going to get hate mail for that one. So direct the hate mail to Jeff at IDAC Podcast, not Jim. That's fine.
Yeah, you've made it once you get hate mail. So I'll take it.
You have to have haters. Okay, so two thoughts come to mind. Number one is, MFA is multi-factor authentication. 2 factors, and here I'm going to name 3 factors, then you get to pick 2 of them, but they have to be different ones. Something something you have, something you are. So if you say our MFA is first we're going to get your password, and then we're going to ask, what was your first pet? Like, that is not MFA.
Knowledge-based authentication sucks. Don't do it.
Probably what everybody already knows, but we still know it's out there and it's horrible. So I will spend more time on that. The other one, though, is what I used to talk about a lot was the unhappy path. So you've got to make sure that if you're going to let people self-serve reset their multi-factor authentication, that it doesn't go back to knowledge base. Like, oh, you want to reset your authenticator app? Sure. What was your first password? Like, no, like that's what the hackers are going to go right for. So most people know those things. I mean, like you said, like this should not be in 2025 the thing you're rolling out, but if you have to, you have to. And then think about MFA everywhere.
Yeah, communicate, have many options, make it easy. If you treat your IAM program and your services like a product, is it a product that people want to buy from you and use? Think about it from that perspective. If it's a crappy product, no one wants to use it. They're going to find ways around it. So find ways to make sure that your IAM product or collection of products, right, whatever that looks like for your own program or whatever it is, that they're good. I mean, nobody wants to use, garbage. So make sure you actually, give some thought into like, hey, is this something that I would use? And if it's not, rethink it. Right. Maybe there's an option that might be, a little bit easier. Sometimes you have to make trade-offs. I get it, but I'm a big fan of productizing IAM. And if you have a good product, people will gravitate towards it. That's how I feel.
Totally. What else do we have?
All right, let's continue. I feel like we're staying in the in that same hemisphere. We'll go with let's see, Omar from Dubai in the UAE. I like this question. I kind of saved this one for last because I think we can probably go into this quite a bit. Because
okay.
So he asked this: how should small and mid-sized businesses approach IAM when they don't have the same resources as large enterprises? Omar, I'm going to give you the Identity at the Center Listener of the Week stamp of approval because I think it's such a good question. This actually got sent maybe a few weeks ago, so I kind of been sitting on this one because I knew we were going to have a mailbag coming up, so I haven't responded in person, but hopefully you're listening, Omar. I love this question for a number of reasons, but please, you start, Jim.
Well, I got to say for Omar, if you send us your address, we'll mail you a sticker. Even if
international
UAE, that might be like $5 to mail.
We'll leave it at the hotel in Berlin, and you can come pick it up. How about that?
Or just meet us up at a conference. But yeah, I mean, it is a good question because, where do you start saying, well, don't spend your money on this, don't spend your money on that? I think you have to think about the crown jewels of your organization and then like kind of critical data, critical applications. And so once you kind of focus on what those points are, I think the first thing you have to do is have strong authentication to all those. So if you do have any kind of network or IDP, you've got to protect that with strong authentication, which means multiple factors of authentication. Ideally, it's something like biometric-based authentication. I think the second thing beyond that is like protecting your email system, protecting your ERP application, whatever are the applications where it's like, that's where our data sits, that's where our information, maybe it's your recipes, your recipe system. But usually it's like your business system and your email. And, you know, a lot of times it's your Microsoft system. So I'm not saying this is what people should do, but this is what I see a lot, is that organizations say, all right, well, you know, we make donuts or we make chairs, or, you know, they're not a mega, you know, billion-dollar company. And they want to still be secure, but they don't want to spend all their money on security and on IT. So we'll go out and get the Microsoft suite, and they'll use the Microsoft Authenticator, and they kind of like build around that. They put all their files out on the Microsoft shares. I'm not saying that's the only way to do it, but that is what I probably see the most.
Well, I think that goes to the strategy of simplification, right? If you have fewer places to try and secure, if you've settled on a platform, let's say like Microsoft or Google Workspace or something like that, right? You're reducing the attack surface by having fewer things. So that's good. I like this question because nobody has unlimited funds. I don't care who you are. There is always a theoretical cap, maybe for some people, but you have to pick and choose the battles. This is a question you and I have wrestled over, you know, for years over, well, where do you start? Do you invest in authentication first? Is it privileged access management? Is it IGA? Is it something else? And the answer is, you know, we're consultants, depends. It kind of depends on where things are at. But it's not just a technology thing. It could be the people in the process. What if you don't have enough people to adequately or effectively do IAM for your organization? You go out and hire new people, that's expensive. Do you contract it out? That can also be expensive. Do you maybe get like a security provider or a managed provider of some sort to kind of augment things? Believe it or not, that actually might be cheaper than trying to hire somebody and train them and bring them up to speed and then keep them on the long term for an employee. So I think you have to look at it from a few different fronts. I'm going to tackle it from the business side first, because I think you have to make the justification for, how do I invest in IAM? Do we have enough people? If we don't, what is our staffing strategy going to be? Can we support hiring people? Do we want to contract it out and maybe fill that temporarily while we're bringing in staff? Or do we want to go the route of, hey, let's keep the important stuff on our side and then maybe use like a managed provider or something like that to maybe be like our outsourced IAM operation, or IAM service in a box, right? Whatever that looks like, for the different providers out there. I think that's one thing you need to figure out first is like, okay, from the business side, how do we want to structure this from a staffing perspective? And then on the technology side, where are our crown jewels? My current thinking and has been probably for the last couple of years is, if you don't have MFA, that should be your first thing that you do, no matter what. Figure out how to get MFA in place. If you're not licensed for it, which I don't know how that would even work for Microsoft, make sure that you got it set up. Take advantage of the licensing you have and turn on every single security feature that you possibly can that makes sense for your organization. A lot of people, for whatever reason, just don't take full advantage of their licensing, in that perspective. But, get MFA in front of places. And there's plenty of options out there. It doesn't have to be just Microsoft, right? There's add-on MFAs and all kinds of things. And then start thinking about your business processes. Where are you going to get the most bang for the buck? I think a lot of people wish they could afford a, top-end, product like a SailPoint or a Savient. They're very expensive. That's just the way they are. But there are a lot of good products, especially in the IGA space, that I'm finding that are much more economical. They may not have, the cachet or the track record of success or the great training programs, all that stuff. But you might find that there are some other products in this space that, may be more palatable from a budget standpoint. But I wouldn't even bother trying to justify an IGA spend unless you have a lot of onboarding, offboarding, critical compliance needs to run access certifications and things like that. I think you can get a long way with the appropriate business process, the appropriate governance on a program level before you even need to spend money on stuff. That's kind of what I'm thinking right now. But what do you think, Jim?
Yeah, I had a couple other thoughts as you were talking. I think there's a big difference between a small enterprise and a mid-sized enterprise where you could be talking about, a 10, 20, 30, $100 million company that is not the multi-billion dollar company. And so those are different scenarios, right? I also think it's kind of, what is your starting point? Is your first foray into trying to secure your enterprise, or have you been investing in it along the way? And it's like, okay, yeah, MFA, we did that a while ago. Backing up our systems, we did that a while ago. Having some kind of endpoint detection, we've been doing that. So, we can handle if we get breached or have a data loss or something like that. The other thought I had was cyber insurance. Is that a good investment for you? We have a couple episodes that we have recorded, and if you go back to our archives, where it's had people come on who have expertise in cyber insurance and how to think about it and how to position yourself well so that you get not only the right cyber insurance, but you get a price that you can afford. Don't want to sound like an insurance commercial, but it is about that in a lot of cases. So maybe that is your safety net. I think a lot of it comes down to where you are, what you've been investing in over time. You might have authentication already in place, but it's really old and rickety. You have to update it. Same thing with IGA. You might be in a position where you have the home built system and you've outgrown it, versus somebody who has like 50 employees and they've never had to take this on before. Maybe they can manage those for cheap if they're only 50 people, especially if they're not in a highly regulated industry. The other thing is that, the question might be coming in from Omar that, he's coming from the perspective of customer IAM. And that's a whole different discussion. Now it's about, okay, well, even if you're a small to mid-sized business, you obviously have aspirations to get bigger. What do you need to put in place to make your customer experience, superior to what else is available? So then you have to start thinking about what is your go-to-market strategy and how does identity fit into that? That's it. That's why I love the customer side, because that's such an exciting conversation.
Well, the other thing too is on the customer side, what happens if you get breached? Are you done because you got breached and all your customer data went out the door or whatever it may be? What's the risk tolerance that your organization has? Look, this stuff isn't cheap. I mean, security is expensive, especially in the aggregate. When you start thinking of all the things you can and should be doing, I think you have to figure out where is your most riskiest areas, and then what do you want to do about it? Not everything has to have a technology control. If you have a strong business process, you have vigilant people, the IAM heroes that you and I talk about all the time, you can get a long way with that, and a lot of places do. Eventually, though, you cannot have a strategy of heroism as your security strategy. That is not sustainable. It might work in short bursts, and it might be something that's needed in the short term. But I would definitely start to think about, are your business processes secure? Do you have a way to look at the data? How are you making sure that you're trying to reduce the risk as much as possible? At some point, someone's going to have to make a decision. Hey, it's time to spend a little money and catch up here, or augment, or whatever it may be. What tends up happening a lot of times I see is you get so far behind that you have to spend a lot of money to catch up. And it becomes like this ginormous task to just get to where good is, or maybe even adequate. And then, I talk about peaks and valleys from a budget perspective. You spend a whole lot of money catching up, and then you don't keep up with it. And then guess what? In 3 to 5 years, maybe a little bit longer if you're lucky, you're spending a whole bunch more money again to try and catch up to good. If you could just figure out how to make that a slow and steady, probably increase just because prices get more expensive over time, I think you'll have a better approach. But it takes a lot of financial discipline to do that. And not every organization is in that mode of, hey, this is going to be a sustained investment. Identity is forever. And so I think you need to think about identity as a long-term commitment for the organization.
I did want to say one more thing on this question before we close out. I think a lot of people are, it always feels like you're like right on the cusp of the next big thing. And that if you just wait one more year, then like AI agents are just going to do this all for you.
Well, blockchain fixed everything for us.
That happened a few years ago, right? And here we are. But I really feel like that, I even had this conversation with Brian the other day, one of our colleagues, and he was like, it feels like someone's just going to come out with this big AI product in 2 years down the road. And like, why spend $1 million right now on IGA or whatever? It's like,
you think that AI products can be cheaper?
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's a good point.
All these companies, spending billions of dollars developing, AI, they need to recoup that money, and they can't have like a 20-year payback plan. So it's going to be like everything else. It's going to be expensive at first, and then it will slowly come down in price. But, whoever's building the first 100% automatic AI agent that will solve all of your security needs, expect to pay a lot of money for that. And expect for it to not work very well as a first iteration. I think, first versions of anything typically are the starting point, minimum viable product maybe. You're going to be in for some growing pains and expensive growing pains too.
It's a really good point. I don't think of that, but I also don't think in 2 years you're just going to flip some AI switch and it's going to do it all for you. So what I tend to find is that the organizations that don't invest steadily over time, the ones who fall way behind and have to do so much just to get to, base level, that it's like a really painful process for them. And everybody's like, why do you need multiple millions of dollars to solve this problem? We did something 8 years ago. It's like, yeah, and we did something 8 years ago and didn't do anything with it since. And now it's old, rusty. It doesn't work very well.
Yeah, it's not a stationary target. This is a moving target. What's good now is going to be not so good, at some point, and you're going to have to modernize or upgrade, or maybe. And I think that's my case for sustained, appropriate funding. I won't say give me all the money in the world, because, if you gave me $1 billion, I couldn't spend it all at once, and I couldn't get everything done anyway. Give me, $100 million. Thank you very much. Over the next 10 years, right? And it'll actually be a little more realistic. Maybe that's, it's a ridiculous number, but hopefully the example.
You'll still have every consulting company and every technology vendor wants to be your best friend.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, that is definitely a good point. Okay, so I think those were kind of the three that we want to tackle. Anything else, or should we end this thing on a lighter note? And who knows, maybe your room will be ready. Yeah,
that would be the best lighter note of all for me.
All right. Do you want option A or option B?
Do you want me to tell you that without knowing what the question is?
Yep.
I'll go with option A.
Option A. Okay. If you had to swap lives with a historical figure for a week, who would it be, and what would you do differently in their shoes?
I was going to say something like Hugh Hefner or something, but I don't think that, just like quote unquote the easy life is living life. You can pick somebody like Frederick Douglass, who, like, man, what an impact he had on the world. So, I just got done watching the Harriet Tubman movie. Really awesome movie. Would I want to trade places with somebody who had it so hard? So it's a really tough question.
Well, this is a chance to do something differently too, right? So I'll give you an example. For mine, the one that kind of jumps out to me right away is Abraham Lincoln. And, not to be, I guess, flippant about it, but I would probably not go to the theater one night.
Yeah. No, you wouldn't have gone to Ford Theater. If you go to DC, you can go and see where Ford Theater was. Like, you walk right by it.
You are just filled with all like kinds of fun facts. I know you're watching history documentaries all the time.
Oh yeah, I do. I was watching some I had plenty of time on the airplane today, hours and hours to watch history documentaries. I'll go with Frederick Douglass then. He was a contemporary of Abraham Lincoln. He, fought his way out of slavery and then just fought to end slavery. What would I have done differently? I think he had a hard time during his time of really building a bridge between himself and Abraham Lincoln. He more saw Lincoln for his, I think he just couldn't get over Lincoln's flaws. In his eyes, he saw them as flaws. He wanted Lincoln to be an abolitionist. The country was not in a position where they were going to put an abolitionist in to be president. And so that wasn't what Lincoln was. He became an abolitionist by the end of the war, by the end of his first term, but he wasn't there. It took time to get there. So maybe partially it was people like Frederick Douglass pushing him along, but I think I would have tried to befriend Lincoln a little bit more and support him. And, I think that's what I would have done.
Our friend Chad, he has a saying, and I don't know if he made it up or stole it from someone, but was it incremental progress is better than delayed perfection? I mean, yeah, that's how I feel about it too.
Yeah, for sure. It's delayed perfection never comes. Just how long is that delay?
Yeah,
we're still working through that. We're still working through that in this country when we're talking about slavery, right? We both pick people from that time period where the country was going from a country that had slavery to a country that didn't have slavery. But the remnants of slavery are still part of our society today, right? That's the delayed perfection. It's like, you don't really ever achieve perfection, probably. Until it's like such a distant memory. Well, you don't look back on like ancient Rome and like, oh man, we're still living the things that did in ancient Rome. We probably are at some level, but we don't even know about it. So 1,000 years from now, I think probably most of those issues will be dealt with 100%.
Well, hopefully it'll be on Star Trek and, exploring new worlds and all that stuff. So
yeah, if there's a world left.
All right. Well, let's leave it there before either of us.
On that lighter note.
Yeah. Thanks, Jim. All right. Let's go ahead and wrap it up for this week. Thank you to Omar, Diego, and Ryan for sending stuff in. If you have other questions, drop them in emails or LinkedIn messages to Jim and myself. We try to answer as many as we get as they come through. The good ones we tend to save, for a mailbag like this, but definitely appreciate people taking the time to send us their thoughts and stuff like that. So let's see. On the web, idacpodcast.com. If you like what you heard, like and subscribe. If you don't like it, like and subscribe anyway, and then send it to somebody you hate. And, maybe they will either hate it, watch it with you, or listen to it, or maybe they'll like it. So let's see what else. Connect us on LinkedIn. And yeah, we'll leave it there for this week. Thanks everyone for watching and or listening, and we'll talk with you all in the next one.
You've been listening to Identity at the Center. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit the website at identityatthecenter.com. See you next time on Identity at the Center.